guys, and welcome along to Off the Rails. If you're new here, this is a fortnightly gaming podcast, and I am the Off-Rail Gamer. It's episode 5, and this week we're going to be picking up a new topic, having talked quite long enough on local multiplayer games in the last 2 episodes. But before we get to the subject of this week's podcast, we have a few other bits to get through, including my recent lives in gaming. And I'm going to interrupt myself there because I immediately recognise how potentially misleading my choice of words could be. When I speak of my recent lives in gaming, I mean that many video games give the player a number of lives that, once all spent, means game over. I have not yet returned to live streaming, although I do have some loose ideas to get this off the ground in the not too distant future. They're just not realised yet. Back to today's agenda. We'll next cover some gaming news, and after that, and only after that, we will get to the main content of this week's podcast. And that, as any returning listeners will tell you, is how this podcast's format usually runs. And all inside of half an hour. So, if you're worried that I'm waffling on, I will get on with it very soon. I just want to give a nod to my socials quickly, and then we will crack on with the first segment of the episode. If I could just draw your attention to the podcast description, you'll see I've included links to my YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, etc. So if you want more content, and why wouldn't you, quite honestly? Or you want to share your thoughts or ask me a question, you should follow the relevant link. In previous episodes, I've suggested directing any comments or queries to my Twitter, and whilst you can absolutely still do this, I have now included my email in the podcast description. So if you are a conscientious objector to Musk's Empire of Sin, you can reach out to me at offrailgamer@gmail.com. As mentioned in Off the Rails episode 4, I'm not verified anywhere, but if you follow my links, it will be me who reads whatever message you might see fit to send in. I can take a bit of criticism, but please be gentle with me on there. There's only so many tears my screaming pillow can absorb. Let's talk about what I've been playing recently. And here comes the usual advertisement for my YouTube channel, on which I have recently been playing some of the games I've recently been playing. The first of these games, close to 2 weeks ago now, I played some Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup. If you haven't watched this video yet, I will warn you that I was really quite poorly when I recorded it. But I don't think I brought much attention to that fact, so you probably wouldn't be able to tell if I hadn't just mentioned it now. Between coughing fits and other charming noises, such as one is like to make when feeling under the weather, I did include some insightful commentary around how Quidditch was missing from Hogwarts Legacy, which released earlier this year. I suppose, much like the ancient pyramids or Stonehenge, there are some things our forebears were able to engineer that contemporary technologies can't figure out, and Quidditch in a video game seemingly joins the list. Unfortunately, I didn't get terribly far into the game in just 1 episode, completing a couple of tutorials before absolutely humiliating Ravenclaw in my first match and beating them by more than 400 points. I was having fun with this title though, so I'm thinking of bringing it back to the channel once I get into the tournament proper. You can catch all this action over on my YouTube channel, offrailgamer. Please see the podcast description for a link to follow, along with the next game that I uploaded. And the next game that I uploaded was in fact, well, not promised, but certainly suggested in the last podcast that it might be soon turning up in a video. Rather than talking in riddles any longer, I'll just tell you the name of the game in question. Rat Attack! There's an exclamation on that, so it needs to be shouted. As usual, things didn't go especially well, but we at least got to see the second boss level having graduated from the house and tackled the great outdoors. Or, well, the garden at least. I don't know what viewers may have made of this video, but capturing gameplay brought nostalgic memories flooding back. Even by the standards of the day, Rat Attack was fairly simplistic. Let's remember, this was the era of gaming that gave us the first 3 Tomb Raider games and the first 3 GTA games, if you count London. And let's not forget Driver 2. However, this brightly coloured pest control game was, and is, nonetheless fun to play. Off the channel and in my free time, I've been playing a bit of Bullfrog's Theme Park on the PlayStation. As a nipper, I used to really love playing this gem of a title, and I've been having a real blast going back to it after so many years. I really like the research mechanic in this game, which, on the one hand, adds to the financial challenge of balancing the books, but on the other hand, allows you to get upgraded rides and shops that will improve visitor satisfaction. Next, you'll be wanting to increase the size of the buses ferrying people to your park, because more visitors bring in more money, and you need to spend money to make money, so the rich get richer while the... I think I'm going off topic a little here. Anyway, Theme Park. Great game. And I've also continued playing Red Dead 2. Guys, I have some really bad news. Micah Bell has been broken out of prison and, following a bank stagecoach robbery, is now strutting around Clemens Point like he owns the place. It's really starting to annoy everyone else. I did help an odd fellow find the locations of a number of strange rock carvings though. This resulted in... Wait, spoiler alert. Please skip ahead 30 seconds or so if you don't want to hear this list. I'll give you a moment to hit that button. And now, I'll carry on for the rest of you. News of these locations caused this grown man to turn back into a baby. For my troubles, or rather for Arthur's troubles, he got an old brass compass that he's had crafted into a talisman that slows the wear and tear on all the weapons he's carrying. And that is what I've been playing recently. Now let's look to some gaming news. First up this week, I want to give a shout out to a game that I'm really looking forward to. Like, really looking forward to. And its release date is just around the corner now. On 12th of July, we're seeing Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals. And you'd best believe I've got my pre-order in for this game. Oxenfree isn't quite the great unknown that it was when I first played, and I have since seen a few people discussing it online. But for anyone listening who is not familiar with this title, I implore you to please check it out. In my opinion, it's well worth a look. Before you go spending any money though, I'll tell you a little about what I love about this game so much, and I'd recommend you do a little research online. This game may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'd hate for you to feel in any way misled by my enthusiasm if you end up finding that Oxenfree doesn't fit your idea of a good time. Furthermore, I have loose plans to stream the first game on Twitch ahead of the sequel's release, and if I can figure out how, I'll then upload the VODs to YouTube. If these plans actually come to fruition, you could have a look at this content and judge for yourself whether you'd like to experience it. Anyway, here goes my brief description of Oxenfree, which is presented in a kind of side-on 2D pixel art style. Kind of. The story sees a group of kids, I'd guess US high school age, taking the last ferry of the evening to Edwards Island for a beach party, which soon turns very weird. There's rumours of strange happenings that can be triggered by tuning a portable radio to particular frequencies, and this forms the basis of the game's main narrative going forward. I don't want to give away too many spoilers for anyone that hasn't played yet, but a series of strange and even quite creepy events play out through the in-game evening. There are multiple possible endings to the game, and you can even interact with yourself over past and future playthroughs. Now, I feel like that is a potentially massive spoiler, so I'm not going to give any further detail about how this is possible. Originally, I downloaded Oxenfree while it was available on Games with Gold. I then waited months before playing because, honestly, the game's thumbnail didn't particularly draw me in. Eventually, I found myself searching through all my games one evening for something to play, and figured I'd give it a look. At this point, I still hadn't heard anything about Oxenfree, and didn't know what I was letting myself in for. But 3 or 4 hours later, when I'd finished my first playthrough, yep, it is quite a short game, it had found a place in my top 10 games list, where it still sits to this day. So when I recently became aware of the upcoming Oxenfree 2, you can imagine I got very excited. and that is why Lost Signals is currently my most eagerly awaited game of this year. It's a good job its release date is only a couple of weeks away now. Now before we press on with the show, here's just a little gaming news that has caught my eye. I'll pop links to all source websites so you can go and find more information about any stories that grab your interest from the links in the podcast description. First off, I read on Game Informer that Oreo Cookies are releasing some Super Mario biscuits that will be embossed with the likenesses of 16 recognisable characters. Having not yet tried these biscuits myself, I can't tell whether they'll prove any more delicious with a hairy plumber's likeness stamped onto the exterior. Games Radar published a story this week reporting that the 6th Elder Scrolls game is expected to spend more time in development than all 5 of its predecessors combined. And that seems to be the way popular game series are heading, as it's been 10 years already since the last GTA. Let's hope the next installments of both franchises will be worth the wait. I'm sure they will be. And finally, there has been some speculation this week that John Marston's first outing in Red Dead Redemption could see a modern console remake, and that's a story I'll be looking out for in future. Now enough news! I'm no Hugh Edwards, you know. So please, on with the main event of this week's podcast. Inspired by Oreo this week, I'm going to talk solely about one game featuring Super Mario after his return home from Sarasaland, having defeated Tatanga and freed Princess Daisy from her kidnapping and false imprisonment. Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins was the first Mario game that I completed, but this aside, it's also a really fun little game that I never see getting all that much attention. All anyone ever wants to talk about is Mario's Sunshine, or Ocarina of Time, and that's not even a Mario game. The first level of 6 Golden Coins sees Mario racing through a hilly level filled with strange frog-looking creatures sporting wigs less convincing than Donald Trump's blatant toupee. I mean, seriously, a man's greatest fear must be a light breeze, right? But I don't want anyone to think I'm singling out America's best-known fascist for ridicule. Our own Poundland version, one Boris Johnson, struggles to keep his hair on too. But one man who's not going to be booking flights to Turkey to get himself a hair transplant anytime soon is the subject of this week's show, Super Mario. He has the good sense to wear a hat, see? Let's try and get back on track, and let's go back to the beginning. I haven't set up the storyline for 6 Golden Coins yet. As I started, Mario had visited Sarasaland in the first game, Super Mario Land, to rescue Princess Peach. No, wait, not Peach. Princess Daisy. On his way home, he found his castle. Great Scott! I'd heard there was money to be made in plumbing, but a castle? That's right, Duke Mario lives in a castle. Only while he was away on his gapyaw, Wario, and I will be calling him Wario, so sorry if this offends your earbrows, Wario has moved in with the intention of claiming squatters' rights. This was our first look at Wario, so I guess 6 Golden Coins is a pretty big deal for Nintendo, even if it doesn't seem to get the love I feel it deserves. Anyway, on his return to his private island, Mario becomes enraged that some oik has had the audacity to try and usurp him of his accumulated wealth, and storms his way as fast as he can to his stately home to put Wario back in his pauper's place. I mean, if Wario wants to give multi-million-dollar donations to private schools overseas while people in his homeland are living hand-to-mouth and rely on food banks... wait, that's Rishi Sunak, isn't it? Sorry, Mario, at least, is a hero, an alien concept to most politicians. The thing is, Wario hasn't just misappropriated the Mario Heritage Site, he's installed himself as some kind of tyrant ruler and corrupted the island's wildlife to turn evil. Mario's quest to return the status quo is not purely motivated by self-interest, but by an obligation to see good reign over the world. I mean, that's why he had to give that big old gorilla a hard time on that construction site. So Mario's booked himself on the first flight home so he can take care of business, and he's duffed up Putin's specially placed buffoons. Now he runs to his castle, only to find he's been locked out. You see, the door to the castle can only be opened with the presence of 6 golden coins, or seals, perhaps. But the name of the game is coins, so in spite of what I think they look like, we'll continue to imagine that this castle is some kind of oversized vending machine that dispenses justice in the form of a handyman equipped with a wrench. No, sorry, that was the film Super, wasn't it? There are 6 coins, each associated with a different zone on the island. Mario must visit each zone and defeat the boss, or bosses, as we will come on to in good time, to collect the coin and earn his way back onto his throne. I can only assume that he's not talking about the toilet there. Players can visit each zone in any order they see fit, but I've always had a tendency to travel anti-clockwise, visiting Tree Zone first. In Tree Zone, Mario starts among the roots and soon climbs up to the bough. But rather than finding Baby in the treetop, he finds the first boss of the game, a pretty angry bird. 2 things. 1, I guess that wind last night blew a little harder than I'd realised. And 2, this isn't one of the angry birds from the popular mobile game. Although hold that thought for the 3rd zone when we get there. The cool thing about Tree Zone is that it offers 2 different routes to the final stage. So, if one way is giving you a hard time, you can just follow the other path. And if memory serves me right, Tree Zone is unique in this manner. All the other zones require that you beat all the levels on your way through. In the boss encounter for Tree Zone, the aforementioned angry bird jumps up in the air on one side of the screen and hovers for a while before swooping down and then elevating itself on the other side of the screen. It is while attempting to buzz Mario that our hero must find the perfect opportunity to jump on the bird's head. Do this a handful of times and it will relinquish the first coin, which disappears into the sky, only to then very slowly descend into its designated slot above the castle door. This animation recurs for every boss overcome. Next up is Turtle Zone, in which Mario literally battles his way through the insides of a giant turtle. Watch out for sharks! Turtle Zone has a secret bonus level that you can reach by finding the star door in the stage that looks like it's set in a sunken shipwreck. Mario also finds himself inside the belly of a whale, which I guess is inside the belly of the turtle? Not that he's trying to one-up the Old Testament or anything, but suck on that, Jonah. Eventually you get to throw down with the game's second boss, a big ol' angry octopus. Much like the angry bird, you defeat the octopus by jumping on its head a handful of times. In fact, make a note of that tactic, you'll be recycling it throughout. The octopus doesn't fight alone though, rather it sends its babies after Mario as well. However, I think they can all be dispatched by jumping on their heads just the once. With Big Squidward out of the way and the second coin ripped from the clutches of its cold, dead tentacles, Mario now hastens his step towards Mario Zone, where he will visit his own right shoe, his midriff, on which I want to say something more, and give a bit of a shout out in just a few moments, before finally facing his inner demons floating around inside his head. Now, as for the stage set in Mario's dungarees, I had happily and perhaps naively always thought we were running around in Mario's tummy. But now I want to share a different theory discussed on another podcast that I like to listen to. I am in no way affiliated, so I hope the mention of this podcast won't upset the creator and host in any way. But if you have a look out for Remember the Game, you'll find an episode devoted to our topic today, in which Mr. Blank and his guest proposed the hypothesis that players are actually rummaging around in Mario's crotch. And the evidence they present seems to stack up. But as this isn't an off-railgamer hot take, I'd recommend you go and give them a listen to hear their justification. And now time for a little callback, as I suggested you keep Angry Birds in mind for when we turn to the 3rd zone. The reason being that in Mario Zone, the boss level throws 3 pigs at Mario, each one moving slightly differently, from rolling along the floor, to bouncing like a space hopper, to springing high into the air. Anyway, my point is that Angry Birds fight pigs, don't they? Not in your David Attenborough documentaries. I mean in the Angry Birds mobile game. So you jump on the 3 little pigs' heads a handful of times, and then you can snatch the 3rd coin from the clasp of their cold, dead trotters. Big Bad Wolf should have saved his breath and just called a plumber out, I guess. Wonder if Mario's up for braining woodcutters as well. Now, as we continue our tour of the island, we turn our attention next to Pumpkin Zone, where we'll be able to meet not just one, but dozens of boos. Pumpkin Zone is your spooksome part of the map, complete with flickering candles, medieval suits of armour, which, for anyone listening, I just want to make clear that I'm spelling armour with a U, and spiders flinging themselves at Mario from the ceiling. This horror show makes Resident Evil look like baby's first scary game. Pumpkin Zone finishes with a battle against a wicked witch. Although she has been tracked down to her kitchen, the jewel is not culinary in nature, otherwise they'd have sent in Cooking Mama to get the job done, right? Well anyway, the witch's kitchen ceiling has been decorated with deadly spikes, and the floor littered with cauldrons sat atop piles of firewood, with Mario standing on the lids of said cauldrons. As the witch flies around the room on her broomstick, really just doing the finest job at trying to shake off those outdated stereotypes, she casts fireballs at the kindling on the floor. The firewood ignites, bringing the contents of the cauldron to the boil, which in turn launches the lid up into the air. If Mario should find himself perched upon that lid at that moment, he will be launched skyward with it, and straight into those deadly spikes. On the other hand, he could always just jump on the witch's head a handful of times and prize the fourth coin from the grip of her cold, dead hands. With just 2 more coins to find, Mario skips merrily on to the macro zone. To reach this location, Mario passes through a series of pipes which shrink him down. He then runs into a wee little cottage, where his biggest threats come in the form of an infestation of ants. Now remember, Mario has been shrunk down at this point, so these ants are now bigger than he is. Make it through the house though, and Mario will confront the next boss, a big old mouse. Jump on its head a handful of, well, you surely get the idea by now. Hippos and space. Don't worry, I'm not losing the plot. The final zone can only be reached by swimming with hippos. These hippos blow bubbles into which Mario can climb and then float around the sky. You can float to the top of the screen and then float right in a straight line to pretty much bypass this level, but I'd also say this is by far the easiest level in the whole game anyway. At the end of the level, Mario takes off to Space Zone to float weightlessly among the stars and on the surface of the moon. The boss of Space Zone is an alien who, if you jump on its head a handful of times, will give up the 6th and final coin. Oh, Wario! Mario's coming and he's a bit cross with you. Now players will lead Mario back to the castle to confront his evil counterpart. Only steady on there. Wario's been doing some redecorating, so now the floor is lava, and there are bullet bills and Home Alone-style booby traps everywhere. Navigate through this hellhole, and you'll be locked in a room with 3 orbs, each of which have Wario's face peering out at you. These orbs fly around the room trying to kill Mario in some kind of dazzling aerial display. Mario's only means of combating them is to jump on them. Doing so a handful of times will rid you of them and allow Mario to carry on towards the throne room, where he'll finally face Wario. But Wario has just eaten a strawberry, or possibly a carrot. In fact, based on what I'm about to tell you, carrot probably makes more sense. But as Game Boy graphics were only presented in different shades of green, it was always difficult to tell as a kid. And I grew up liking strawberry yogurts, so I'd always imagined it was a strawberry. I'm sure the game manual could have set me straight on that, if I'd bothered to read it. Anyway, Wario eats his carrot, which gives him bunny ears that he can flap to fly around the room. He then attempts to attack Mario with butt stomps from above. That's right, I said butt stomps. But Mario can also eat a carrot and grow bunny ears all of his own. The two fight it out in a battle for the ages, but in an impressive display of power, Wario evicts Mario permanently. No, he doesn't. I'm just fooling with you. Mario jumps on Wario's head a handful of times and sends him packing. Wario then goes off in search of riches and a castle of his own. That's a whole different game. So, let's close the book on Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins there. I could say a little more about it, but looking at you, you seem to be getting all tuckered out. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this, episode 5 of Off the Rails podcast. In 2 days' time, I'll be posting a new video up on YouTube, so please feel free to check that out. If you're listening to this podcast on Stitcher, I've had an email to say that Stitcher will be closing things down soon, but you can also find me on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. Thank you very much for sticking with me, and I'll hopefully catch you all right back here in 2 weeks' time. Bye!